started, one of our speakers is stuck in traffic coming down from Denver. He'll be here before too long. And if I would just like to make an announcement before we start. US 24 again is closed. So, we're watching Manitou. If we have any more information during the evening, we'll try to pass that on. I think we would normally, in a council meeting, start with prayer and the flag, and I don't see the flag, but I would like just to encourage you all to have a moment of silence for some of the victims that have lost their lives this last week over on the west side, and just a note of appreciation and thanks for many of the state, county, city workers that have really been working overtime this last week, this last month really, 6 weeks, and continuing emergencies over in Manitou Springs, Deep Pass area, and I'm sure those things will continue to be challenging, but we should also just reflect that as inconvenient as it is over there, this really is a deadly situation. People are trying to protect lives and really deserve our thanks for your efforts. So please just join me in a minute of silence. Now we are on the public record. This is going to be recorded and I believe put on YouTube, so it will be accessible by the public. But I would like to maybe start out just by introductions. I'm State Senator Kent Lambert. This is my Senate District, Senate 9, and it includes the westbound lane of US 24 and all the Waldo Canyon area, Black Forest area, the Air Force Academy. So this is obviously of great concern to both me and my constituents. So glad to be here tonight. Commissioner.
Peggy Littleton, El Paso County Commissioner.
Neil Shearer, District Director with Kent Lambert here in Colorado Springs.
Anna Open Gardner, and I work for U.S. Senator Michael Bennett, and my office is also in Colorado Springs.
Good evening, Dan Norberg, State Representative, House District 14, which is just west of the Black Forest area, across the way from Highway 83.
Greg Linder, District Conservationist with Natural Resources Conservation Service.
Darrell Quinn, El Paso County Commissioner and Chair of the Recovery Effort.
Thank you. This will be like a relay race. I'd like to just open up with some ideas for some ground rules. First of all, this is a subcommittee of a long-range planning committee that is led by Commissioner Glenn, which is a special committee of the commissioners, right? Am I getting that right? El Paso County. This is not U.S. Congress. This is not the Colorado General Assembly. And we are here to discuss state and federal issues and interactions with El Paso County, to collect and submit information to El Paso County, perhaps with some recommendations, but it's for them through Commissioner Glenn's Long Range Planning Committee. So my objective is to make Commissioner Glenn happy, and if Commissioner Glenn's happy, I'm happy. And if he's not happy, I'll go and consult. We do have open meetings, so this has to be recorded. It's a public meeting. Our documents are public records. So what we'll try to do is if we mention things, right now I don't know of any PowerPoint that we'll be using this evening, but if we do have documents, refer to those documents, we'll try to get them into the county commissioners and put them up on the county website. And just as a rule of thumb, mentor connections. So those types of issues should be directed toward those committees. And if, obviously, if those committees have ideas for legislation, either at the state or federal level, we would take them to ask us to do further studies of those. We'll certainly take up those actions. But we don't want to conflict with those. So if there's an issue, let's say on debris removal, and you haven't mentioned those committees, I would just ask for any, when we get to public comments, try to coordinate with those committees first, and then if they have either state or federal implications, those committees can forward to us. In the same way, if we hear great ideas tonight that maybe about debris removal, we would want to probably refer those first down and over to those other committees. So we do this in a positive order, so it doesn't conflict with all the different studies. We don't have any formal rules, Robert's rules of order, Masons, and things like that. So I would ask the panelists, we'll just be kind to each other and respect each other's time and not, we'll just take everybody in order and make sure if we either have panel remarks or remarks from the audience, whoever's got this has the floor, because we do need to get this on the public record. And unless anybody has objections to that, the next thing I'd like to do is to cover just the agenda items we have tonight and approve the agenda, and then we'll get started. So any other comments on that? Dedicated to the month? Are you happy? I'm happy. The agenda, and instead of putting this on the slides, because it's a fairly simple, straightforward agenda, I'll just kind of summarize what we're going to be doing. First of all is to get an update about the FEMA request that came from the state to the Federal Emergency Management Agency. We've delayed a lot of our meetings here because we wanted to find out what was going to happen with the FEMA requests first. Now those have been processed. Most of those have been approved and have been returned to the state and the county. As I understand it, the county and the state are not planning to recall any of the disapprovals on things that might have been on that. Just for the record, that was a combined request both for the Black Forest fire and for the Royal Gorge fire. Mr. Kevin Klein, the Director of Emergency Management from the state, is going to be here in a few minutes. He's delayed because of the traffic and the weather coming down from Denver, but he hopefully should be here in about the next 25-30 minutes. And if we do have questions from the panel, why don't we defer those questions until then. Ms. Russell, could you, one thing that didn't happen today, well, first of all, are there any panel questions about the status of the FEMA resolutions? I think everybody's had copies distributed to them on how what's going on with FEMA. And if you have any questions later, let's wait till Kevin Klein gets here. So that was the first item on the agenda. Then we'll talk about the other federal and state assistance programs, try to get a status update on that. We have Mr. Greg Langer here from NRCS and Kristen Russell from El Paso County, who can give us a few updates on that. And then I'd like to have a quick discussion about the status of the Waldo flood problems, because some of these are very parallel issues from the federal level, especially if it's a process issue that's sort of a common issue between the Black Forest issue, Waldo Canyon, and then the Waldo flood problems. We have a unique opportunity to take up some of these because we have all the representatives from federal and state offices here tonight. The next item is the committee or the commissioners, any inputs that you would have on new appropriations requests. And we'll get into that a little bit later. And then any ideas you might have about non-appropriations legislation or studies that we'd like to get on the record, and then we'll decide what we want to do with each of those actions. And then we'll be glad to have public input on or questions as they pertain to those agenda items. Does anybody have any questions or comments about the agenda? And since it's formal, I'll just move that we accept that agenda. Do you have any no votes on that? We'll use Mason's rules on that. So we'll go ahead and accept the agenda. And we've kind of covered the FEMA request. I think that's been distributed to everybody. Any other questions on the status of the FEMA reports? Okay. Ms. Russell, could you give us a quick update on today's release about the information about Small Business Administration? Because that is news.
Yes, sir. We don't have a great deal of more details about this other than the Small Business Administration release that came out today. First, I'll introduce myself. My name is Kathy Russell. I'm the new fire recovery manager focusing on Black Forest Fire. So I am essentially a team lead in charge of a small team that's helping coordinate the county's efforts in support of recovery. But by no means are we doing everything because private citizens and voluntary organizations do most of the heavy lifting in recovery. Our job is to coordinate with you. So that said, really loud, okay, because unfortunately, we're having our afternoon rain again, which I really wish were not happening. Yes, so this afternoon, we did get confirmation from the Small Business Administration that we received the information from them, which will include low-interest loans to assist small businesses and also individual property owners. So just because it says Small Business Administration, don't think it's just for businesses. Individual homeowners and families can apply for low-interest loans through this program. And all the details will be coming out on all the various media and on our websites, so you'll be able to look that up. And the SBA will have representatives at the walk-in assistance center, which is set up at Fire Station 1 over at Teach Out Road. So if anybody does not know where Fire Station 1 is, see me after, and I'll get you a map and some directions to that. So without hijacking the rest of the meeting, that's in a nutshell what happened today, which is good news.
Thank you, Ms. Russell. And I do have a hard copy of that press release if you have interest in that. Anybody in the audience, we have a copy. So after the meeting, if you have a special interest in the Small Business Administration assistance, we have this. It's also been distributed to everybody on the committee, and right, and Black Forest Fire website and El Paso County website. So it should be there already. Next, before Mr. Klein gets here, I would like to ask maybe Mr. Greg Langer about what the Natural Resource Conservation Service is doing in Black Forest, and specifically about FMAG, I think is the abbreviation here for mitigation groups, and for the panel, anything that might be upcoming decisions to be made, congressional appropriations requests, things like that.
Okay, what the NRCS has been doing is since the fire, we've had some phone calls from local residents wanting us to come out and help them with advice on what they can do with their property. Since then, we've been out and we've gone through our damage survey assessment for the Emergency Watershed Protection Program. We're compiling the information right now so that we can send in and get a determination on the amount of dollars worth of flood mitigation effort that might go towards this fire area. Once we get that information up to our state office, then if it meets qualifications for EWP and everything is a go for that, then our state office will make a request to Congress for a certain dollar amount of flood mitigation and fire rehab type practices that we can install out here. So as far as the subcommittee goes, we'll just be getting that information in and just be looking for it probably here in the next week, maybe week and a half. We should get it done pretty quick.
Thank you, Greg. And if I could ask, now, if there are additional requests for funding, does that go directly to the county or the state, or what's the process of because I do want all of the representatives here of the U.S. senators and congressmen to be able to get rapid information about when those departments are announced or established.
What we'll do is we work with the county who will be the sponsor for this EWP effort, and actually we're going to turn the DSR over to the county so that they can put a value to the mitigation efforts that we recognize in the damage survey report. So we should have a pretty good feel for the number of dollars, and once we get that request sent into Congress, that's pretty much a set dollar amount. As I understand, there's always chances that they can add some dollars to it if need be. But once we submit that request for those dollars, then that's pretty much a set deal.
Yeah, thank you very much, and I'm sure Congressman Landor's office and the U.S. Senator's office will be looking at that in great detail to make decisions about supporting that for thousands. So I think that's probably one of the important things of this subcommittee is to follow the status of that, communicate that both with the committee and with the public as we go forward to make sure that doesn't get lost in the Washington agenda. Also, I understand there's been some requests of the Army Corps of Engineers. Is anybody familiar with that? Because I think Mr. Klein is prepared to talk about that. So we'll, with no objection, we'll continue to the next item on the agenda here and come back to that when it gets there. I also mentioned that Representative Amy Stevens from House District 19 is here. This is also her district, and so she's available for questions later as well. Okay, so let's just talk a little bit about this. I kind of like to make this a little bit of a discussion. Ms. Russell, are you able to talk about the governor's declaration on the Waldo emergency request? I think he's already declared an emergency over there. Maybe one of the commissioners can update us on that.
I don't have that information yet. This is one of the many items that's moving very, very quickly. I saw the note go by yesterday, which was very good. So we will get that information together for you and pass it back up the line.
Okay, I think Mr. Klein may also be able to talk about that when he gets here. As I understand it, we're talking about maybe $400,000 for debris cleanup, and after the state emergency declaration, I think it's important that we follow that so we're aware of the process that we're going through on that and help out some of the legislators, other people can help out if we can on those. So let's flag that and come back to Mr. Klein as he walks in the door. The next item of business is the committee or the commissioner's input for any additional appropriations. One thing, I'd like to start that out actually. We've already talked about the FMAP process that the county is working on through the EWP effort. We'll be following that, and I would like to move that we keep that as an open agenda item for future meetings and for recommendation. I do that without objection. The second thing that affects federal appropriations is the Stafford Act. The Stafford Act, as I understand, is federal law that defines what FEMA can do. And FEMA is usually money that is directed by Congress to the executive, to the president, who can release certain FEMA money by executive order. Senator Udall has been actively trying to amend the Stafford Act because in almost all cases, all nationwide emergencies, there's a 15% additional benefit for local governments or states for mitigation of problems after an emergency, like picking up after a flood, something like that, like the Mississippi River flood. Unfortunately, that does not include wildfires. So this is a major issue, I think, with especially western states where these are quite common from here to California. And Ms. Oden-Gardner, I know you're familiar with this. If you could give us an update on that, because I would like to get some of that information on the public record here so we can discuss that and pass it on to the county.
I'll get you the actual language and more of a summary for you to publish. But just for those of you who are here, Senator Udall and Inhofe submitted a bill, Michael co-sponsored, and it's the policy change, just as you said, so that, and they offered the amendment to the Farm Bill, but the Farm Bill has not moved, but it's there. So if we can get it passed, it would add wildfire to that FMAG. And so the FMAG comes really as assistance to those who are fighting the fire, the local governments. So hopefully they're not expending all the funds they have to fight the fire and then not have something to go back in and support the community, roads, whatever else is needed. So the federal government will fill in on that emergency level and help the local communities fight the emergency. And then when if there's extra dollars, then those become available. They do flow through the state, and so then the state, however they might allocate, the state, I don't know, last year, how many FMAGs we actually had in the fire season last year throughout the state of Colorado. But the state, so it's an allocation that then comes to the state, and the local regions need to be planning and thinking about how they would use those dollars and then apply back. I'll use the example of the Waldo fire because just like Black Forest, that was also declared a presidential disaster. Both were declared presidential disasters. Because they're declared presidential disasters, there is a 15% over and above the cost of the whole fire. So they wait, so they just are figuring out now on the Waldo fire how much was spent, and then the federal government gives 15% more to the state to spend on things that are needed. Obviously now you can see that flooding is going to be a big issue over there, and so that 15% has been received by the state. They're starting to figure out how to allocate that. I heard, I guess at the recovery meeting on Monday, or Tuesday or Wednesday, sorry, Monday, that they're thinking about 400,000 will come to El Paso County. And one of the things that they're thinking about doing is buying out some of the homes that are in those drainage ways that are completely destroyed and getting rid of the homes so that they can redo the drainage now. So that's the kind of thing that they might do with those emergency dollars. Black Forest fire Black Forest and Royal Gorge was a presidential disaster, so the state will be getting 15% over the cost of all fighting of those fires. So that money will be coming, but it'll probably be about a year before that comes. So the planning needs to start. We need to be thinking about work with the Black Forest together to think about some of the things that those dollars, might be applied for, and it would be about a year.
Thank you very much. If that bill is passed, would benefits be retroactive, or they set a retroactive date? I don't think they can do it. It's sort of a ex post facto law. But, certainly in the future, this is something I think a lesson learned that we need to be serious about. And if we have a chance to review this as a committee, we're not a decision-making body, but certainly this could be referred to the county if they wanted to, decide to support or reject this or whatever. That's up to the county. But I think it's one of those things that we need to pass to the county, to the state, and both houses of Congress. So, thank you for the update on that.
There's one other bill that Michael is working with Senator Crapo, and they have introduced it, and they tried to get it inside the Department of Homeland Security bill, but right now it's a standalone, but they'll continue to work on that, and it would actually add more money for FEMA pre-disaster mitigation program. And that's highly competitive across the country, and it would allow states that have a lot of FMAG activity, so a lot of disaster activity, like Colorado. It would allow them, it would fill the pot with more money and allow those states to go after that money and apply for it to bring it. So if we can get that in this year, there would be more pre-disaster mitigation, which could be very helpful in the work that will be planned moving forward in the Black Forest for the areas that are still standing but still highly susceptible.
Thank you. And if there is a draft or some sort of copy of the bill or something, if you could forward that email over, and we'll add that to the record as well. We have had, actually, let me put this under sort of the category. Well, let me get back here to information here about US 24. We have had several discussions about 24 and the whole experience in total between Walden Canyon Fire, the flooding now, and the Black Forest Fire has raised some important issues about several that we'll get into. But one of the things that affects or could affect federal appropriations is whether or not the county and state decide to push for, let's say, federal funds to reconstruct US 24. I don't know if that's exactly the right terminology, but it may be that there's a long-term problem over there where the actual physical change of the floodplain is going to require major reconstruction of culverts, of safety barricades, even electronic signals for traffic, the gates come down like they do on I-25 during snowstorms, things like that. We're obviously greatly overstressing our state police and county sheriffs over there just because of the manpower involved. But I'd like to, at least get on the agenda, maybe a standing agenda item as to what we're going to do about that. Commissioner Glenn, I have a question about that. Is there a process in the county, and I hope I'll ask this again to Mr. Klein when he gets here, but what would be the appropriate process, and this is sort of a rhetorical question, but to establish a requirement and to do like an impact study or a requirement study to quantify the things that need to be done. And I think that would be, a lot of that would be CDOT, but then US 24 also goes to incorporated Manitou Springs, it goes, down Fountain Creek, we get into the city of Colorado Springs, and this is a major east-west federal highway. And I think to keep this viable in the long run, they really need to look at now what may be a permanent change in the floodplain, or at least permanent for many years, and establish those requirements so we can go in and maybe request federal emergency transportation funding for the state. And I don't know how they would divvy that up, but it's obviously it's a U.S. highway that's administered by the state. You have, what would you like to see on that?
A recommendation from this committee to the larger committee, and then it goes to the board.
Okay, and just for the record, what Commissioner Glenn said is a recommendation from this committee to look into a requirement study by, I guess, led by the state, by the Department of Transportation, in coordinating with the other local governments,
Yes.
to establish a requirements process to look at, let's say, reconstruction of US 24, whatever is the appropriate term there. Would anybody like to make a motion about that?
Well, and I sat in on the Monday meeting, which was the recovery for Waldo, and they have CDOT participation at that, and it seems like that's the committee that, that could be, that you take that recommendation to that committee and ask that committee to ask for that, because they may be already on that path. That was covered, not that particular motion, but that was covered at the meeting on Monday.
I don't know if the Monday meeting, I think that was Commissioner Clark's meeting, I don't think that's part of the long-range planning meeting. It's not a subcommittee, right? Would you just like us to go ahead and make a motion in that regard as well?
You still want to refer it from this body, if that's something this body wants the larger committee to essentially act on. We want to make sure that we consistently provide that recommendation to the large planning committee, and then we'll follow it up from the county level.
Okay.
That is probably just a Waldo County recommendation, not a Blackfoot.
And instead of passing tonight, Commissioner Gillette said yes. Like motion. I would like to introduce Mr. Kevin Klein from the State Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security. Is that correct? Close enough. Okay. And to get back on this particular issue, Kevin, what we're talking about is a resolution from this committee to Commissioner Glenn's Long Range Planning Committee to start a requirements process led by the state in coordination with all the appropriate local authorities to look at maybe a redesign effort and a request for federal emergency transportation funds if necessary on US 24. And one of the things we skipped over here was sort of the status of the emergency declaration by the governor and any actions being taken now over for that immediate flood problem. And by the let me just see if you have an answer to that question first.
To the Highway 24
Right.
So a request went in as part of the disaster declaration the governor made Saturday. So the request was made Saturday night. That then triggered a request to the U.S. Department of Transportation for emergency highway funding, and they're going to come out and look at that. The other thing we've done is kind of short-circuited the Corps of Engineers process by going ahead and contracting with a private engineering firm instead of waiting for the Corps to get all the approvals done. So that is in process now, and that's actually going to be handled through him to do that. And I apologize for being late. that request was for technical assistance, so that was really a request for design assistance on the flood mitigation project. So that is, bringing in their hydrologists and taking a look at where we anticipate flows and what types of flows and how big the culverts have to be and all that kind of stuff. So our contract is actually going to be with Wright Water Engineers, and we're going to start working with them as soon as possible. So that we're looking at doing through management just because they can contract it as we can go through the years procurement process.
What funding gets used?
That is, Colorado Water Conservation Board is forming up for these years.
And so Colorado Water Conservation Board is the answer. So if that action has already been taken by the governor, that will trigger the requirements action. So actually making a motion about that from this committee is probably sort of a moot point at this time. But I would move that we follow the activities and that requirements process. Just provide information to the senators in the congressman's office and press ahead with that. Is there any objection to that motion? Okay, seeing none, we'll put that on the future agenda. Mr. Klein, do you have any other, we'd already kind of covered the areas about the FEMA requests and the approvals on that. I think the committee is aware of those things. We've been discussing those. And then we had, you just mentioned the Corps of Engineers. By the way, their purview is on navigable rivers, right? Doesn't it have to be a navigable waterway? Well, we wanted to put in a special call out to Mr. John Schroyer, who demonstrated in this car that was a navigable river. It's on YouTube if you haven't seen that. But in all seriousness, it's a very, very dangerous situation over there. And I don't mean to make light of that because we did have a fatality in the same area, as I understand it. So we need to, certainly move forward with great speed. But could you give us any other comments you might have? Greg Langer updated us a little bit about FMAG. But you have any other comments about that, and we also mentioned the SBA press release.
Okay. So the big programs that were for the Black Forest Fire were the public assistance, which is in process for the infrastructure that was damaged. So we've got that coming in. And then from that, we anticipate about $1.7 million in hazard mitigation funds that will follow. Disaster unemployment, that was triggered. Crisis counseling was triggered. The individual and household program was denied. And at the request of El Paso County, just because we knew there's no new information and we weren't anywhere near the typical thresholds for individual and household assistance. At the request of the county, the governor decided not to appeal that denial, which then triggered the SBA to go ahead and release individual assistance. So the Small Business Administration has a program that's available for individuals, which is kind of, it's their disaster emergency program. And you don't have to be a small business to qualify. You can be an actual just residential owner or even renter. So those programs have been triggered, and you saw the press release on that.
So for the people in the audience here, SBA, small business, if they wanted to take advantage of this, how would they go about this?
Tell you thank you. So beginning Wednesday, customer service representatives and counselors from Colorado Springs Small Business Development Center will be on hand to start taking applicants. And then they'll be at the El Paso County Outreach Center at Black Forest Fire Station 1 training room. And that opens the 14th, and the hours will be Monday through Fridays, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. And the center will close on the 29th. And the website for that is www.sba.gov/disaster, where they can get more information on it.
And I see there was a little consternation about the shortness of that. I recommend that whether you know you need it or not, you go and you talk to them. I can remember having this exact same conversation about the Waldo fire and talking to the small business administrator on this very topic. And he said, we know people don't necessarily know, but if you come in and start an application, you do not have to take a loan. You don't have to sign anything, but it gets you inside the time frame for filing. I think we'll take questions after. I saw your frustration, so we'll talk into it more, but there is the ability, that was the recommendation during Waldo, is if you think, even if you don't know, go talk to them and get it started, and then you can take time.
And thank you. One thing I would, this is going to be, if there is a question, is the right person to go to at the County Service Center. For a question about SBA, it would be,
It's them, but we're gonna send out a press release, but
yeah, I mean, where physically are they located?
It's going to be at the Black Forest Fire Station.
Okay, Black Forest Fire Station was the answer. Just go to Black Forest Fire Station, and we'll have the information about the Small Business Administration loans there. Whether not just loans, but other support. And just for announcement, US 24 is now open again, and the flood warning is canceled. And sir, let me actually go out of order. If you had a specific question about the SBA, let me go ahead and.
Basically, a point of order. I have a whole series of questions that deal with county, state, and federal matters, including that. Do you want us to wait to the very end? Okay.
That's on the agenda. Yeah, thank you very much. Okay, a few things. Let's get into what I would call old business, just to very quickly go through some of these things that we've already sort of discussed online, but I kind of like to get on the public record. The state has formed a joint wildfire matters review committee. The first meeting of that is going to be tomorrow, and I did get some documents about that meeting, some of the presentations they have, and I did already email those to members of the committee. And I'm not sure about the time of that. If you're interested in going to that, I think that's posted on the 9 a.m. tomorrow at the state capitol. Okay, next topic. We had a discussion about a state defensible space study. And Mr. Klein, I was wondering if you could give us a quick status update on that, anything that we should be aware of.
This is a project that I'm fairly excited about. The government wanted to get an idea of how well defensible space worked, and Black Forest Fire was a perfect study environment for that. Because there are treated properties, untreated properties, fuels that have been mitigated, fuels that have not been mitigated. So we're conducting a study of that, and it has been an on-the-ground effort to go out and survey 400 some lots, question the firefighters that were there. Black Forest Fire and the surrounding fire districts have been very active in that. They spent 3 days going out and collecting on-the-ground data, and then we've also collected aerial data, satellite data, to take a look at what lessons learned there are from defensible space. We're working with the Colorado State Forest Service and Colorado State University to do an academic study on that, the data that we've captured, to do an academic report on that. So that is underway. The Peak Wildfire Partners are the lead on that, and they've been doing a super job.
Thank you, and as that goes on, we will just, I don't think we need a motion, but we'll just try to keep aware of that and keep that on the agenda for future information. And when we get that, of course, we'll pass that off to the county. There was a citizen request that I got that I've asked the Department of Revenue about, and that's the disposal of unidentified vehicles that got their VIN numbers burnt off. That's really the purview of county clerk and recorder for titling issues. How do you dispose of a vehicle that doesn't have a title, or at least an identification on it? I had asked Department of Revenue about that several times, and I still don't have a good answer on that, but I'll keep that on the agenda until we find out more.
On that, if push comes to shove, we get a waiver and an extension of the executive order to the Department of Revenue.
And that's what we were trying to push for, but I still haven't heard back from them. So we're trying to office, so we'll pass them on to you when we get them. We did have a question also about gray water, especially with Southern Baptist disaster response. They had a problem disposing of that. I think that has been all resolved, so we'll just close that item out. But thanks to the health department and Colorado CDPHE for working on that item there. One of the, I had an extensive discussion with Sheriff Akita yesterday, and one of his, I guess I could say it's sort of his request or his comment, was that we need to look at the command structure in general for firefighting. There have been a lot of overlapping jurisdictions, for instance, in the Waldo Canyon fire. We have the U.S. Forest Service, we have the firefighters in the county, we have the firefighters in the city, we have Manitou Springs. Of course, that's the nature of it, is you're going to have a lot of jurisdictions. As we go forward, one of the other topics we'll want to discuss is a state law that we already have now to start a state-level aerial tanker fleet. That has been approved this last year, however, it was not funded. But if we assume that it might be funded in the future, it's important to have the right command structure to know who's in charge, who can react to that quickly, and we'll try to, we need a discussion, I think, of making sure our command structure reacts quicker than the aircraft, so everything is safe and everybody knows who's in control. One of the examples, for instance, on US 24 that we've had some side conversations about is that apparently CDOT, Colorado Department of Transportation, is responsible for actually opening and closing rules by state statute, but they're not inherently just an emergency service. So they're working together very well with the state patrol, the county sheriff's office, but we might want to go back and look again at the current state law. I talked to Mr. Klein about this a little bit. I think we had part of the state law take effect, the new state law, on the 1st of July, but there's apparently some other laws that were passed about 2008 that we might want to review to make sure that we have the most responsive command structure that gives the proper authority to the county and federal government and so forth to make sure we can find those lanes in the road. Could you comment about that command structure and what happened on the 1st of July?
With the command and control of wildfires is Senate Bill 25 from 2008. It set it up so the local first responder fire district is in charge until they cry uncle, and then it goes to the next level, which would be the unincorporated 25 statute is the fire warden. And then once it exceeds the sheriff's capabilities with local mutual aid, they can then pass it off to the state, and then the state can bring in federal assistance, federal overhead, federal management teams. So that's the general gist of how that works. The complicating issues are when you have different land ownerships and different responsibilities that fire doesn't, recognize, does not respect the political boundaries. So, for example, the command and control of a fire on U.S. Forest Service property is generally with the Forest Service until it threatens to escape Forest Service property or has escaped Forest Service property. Then it becomes either a county or a state responsibility. And there are agreements in place on how to handle that, but it's not always a seamless process. So this is one of the things that the Wildfire Task Force is dealing with, and it's something that I'll be briefing the interim committee on some of the things that were discussed on that. So it is a multifaceted issue. It does come with some complicating factors, and a lot of it gets down to the color of money. So when it's on federal land, the feds pay for it. When it escapes federal land, then we have to do some sort of cost sharing.
Thank you, and I think that's one of the concerns that Sheriff Keita brought up was, and this is a legal question, where does the power of the county, where can the local county sheriff actually declare, as part of the state, declare this as a health, life, and safety issue, and it's the inherent responsibility and constitutional authority of the state to protect. So I know this is an open issue, and I would propose that we try to collect some historical information about this. I know Congressman Scott Tipton has proposed what's called the Healthy Forest Management Act. I'd like to get a copy of that, see what he's doing with that proposal. But as I understand it, it's to share requirements and responsibilities for forest management between the state and the federal government. So that may ease that federal sovereignty expectation for the Forest Service if that were forward. And it's not just the immediate firefighting, but it's also the long-range management of the forest, which has been a great concern in western states, whether the forest would be managed. Now, Sheriff Keita also said things like the importance of fire roads that are actually still on the topographical maps from the 1940s and 50s, but they have, by policy, been allowed to overgrow, and we don't have those defensible fire lines at least in place. So that's the type of thing that may be brought up in this overall idea of who is responsible for command and control of the firefighting as well as the requirements of forestry management.
So that's good to hear about Tipton's bill, and we'll go also get that. Michael did introduce legislation that expands the Good Neighbor Authority into a nationwide program that allows those different jurisdictions to work together across lines when they've got resources. Forest Service has got resources, they're working, and they come up against state property, they can walk right across, continue their mitigation in state property, do some sharing without getting all kinds of permits, and the state has the same ability, working in their area on their land, and they got to cross over, so that sounds like those bills could probably meet up and work their way through Congress. You just said, the struggle with all the work that was done after Waldo is there was so much of that was Forest Service land. Very different here in the Black Forest. So again, having this committee focus on the private forests, I think, is a good use of resources, because there's not a lot of focus on private forests. And there is a lot of thought statewide on that federal forest issue. So I hope that we can think about how we can support, and NRCS is a great tool because they do have federal dollars that can help private landowners with their forests.
Thank you. And on the command and control process, again, we also have local districts, the fire district, like Forest Fire District, or Manitou, or all the other fire districts that come to help. And again, what is the state requirement, or the new state requirements for, like, communication has already been addressed a lot about improving communication channels. Mr. Klein mentioned that when Colorado finally got the call, it took about 4 minutes to get started on actually redesignating fire resources to the area. But we do want to make sure that the rules of the road are clear as to what the expectations are for local fire districts, cities, everybody else for escalating those kinds of questions. And I just happened to sponsor a bill a couple of years ago also about volunteer organizations around the state, like search and rescue, things like that, where a county, if one county certifies a volunteer, then by memorandum of understanding, with other counties, they could be serving statewide. And one of the problems, I don't know if it's a problem or an opportunity at this point, but this red card system that the federal government requires is something we need to take a look at as well, because there are private citizens with extraordinary capabilities of doing some firefighting, but sometimes they don't have red cards, so they're not invited to the party. And we either need to pre-survey their capabilities, like bulldozer operators, things like that, get them trained and certified in advance, or somehow get a different kind of authorization to get in there. Part of the problem has been liability on the part of the U.S. Forest Service. We want to respect that, but when the forest is burning, we need to bring everybody to bear. Yes.
Well, that's, our push on that is, again, multifaceted. One is the Western governors are working on this with a bipartisan group that are looking at the issues of Western states and how can we come together as states and share resources and do more without having to rely on the federal government for everything. That would include something like the aviation assets. The other thing that we're actively pursuing is getting more resources certified. They're having some minimum level of training in order to be able to operate safely is important. And it's important whether you're a federal incident commander or a state incident commander, that you know that the resources that you're coming in know what to do and how to do it safely. So, you know, we're still going to have that issue where we'll have people that aren't certified or haven't put their information into their systems to be, you know, even though they've got equipment and manpower and skill, but we need to go out and push getting them into our system. And that's one thing that both my office and the Division of Fire Prevention and Control are going to really push, is to get out and get more entities participating in those programs.
Thank you. And Commissioner Glenn, this may fit into the lessons learned meetings that you're going to have in the future, but since Sheriff Akita actually mentioned some of these things, he thinks something needs to be readdressed, I would move that we keep this as an open item, try to do some, request some research on this, and now how, can I just go directly to Sheriff Akita or his office and ask for sort of a list of requirements that he'd like us to take a look at in state government?
Anyway, yes.
The answer is yes. Okay. Do I hear 50?
Yes. Because we're going to start our first lessons learned on the 22nd. And what we're anticipating, after that,
is to be able to forward a lot of the issues back to the subcommittees
And then the subcommittees, we're going to rely on those to provide that information to us. And in particular, if there are any legislative changes like you're mentioning, that's the recommendation that we would like to come from.
Okay. And what was,
I was just wondering if those lessons learned are going to the committee of capital tomorrow. In other words, will they be sent on? No.
it's a new lessons learned.
Yeah, we're starting a whole new lessons learned process. We're going to have it every 3 or 4 months, just on the recovery effort, and even if people had some concerns with regard to response time, just for the Black Forest Fire.
Well, I would move on this command and control or that type of lesson learned, that we make that an open item and anticipate some new requirements from the lesson learned committee. Also, I mentioned previously the state plans to have a dedicated state tanker fleet. It kind of fits in with the command and control issues, like who is in charge, how do you escalate the requests for assistance, and then how do you get them there quickly. We're dealing off of a lot of old technologies, and I think there are a lot of exciting new processes that should be studied. I don't know if it's mature enough right now to make decisions as to what planes to acquire, or the helicopters or planes or whatever. I did distribute to the committee a study that was done by Mr. Ed Herlick, and he's former Air Force officer, and just to summarize his thoughts is that there could be basically three types of aircraft that could be very, or let's say more effective in combination than even some of the things we're doing with C-130s now. The first phase is some heavy lift helicopters. The second phase is actually a modified A-10. I guess he's an A-10 pilot, but it would, basically go and directly attack and fire very quickly, especially if you have high winds, things like that. And then having the larger tankers come in. What the force mix would be, I don't know, but one of the suggestions that had already been announced by Governor Hickenlooper was the idea of an interstate compact to work with neighboring western states to do that, which may be, I would think, a very important idea to look at. So if we can defer that, or if there's no objection, we'll try to collect more information about that. And that may be the type of thing that could go, if the county has recommendations about that, could go to that Joint Welfare Matters Review Committee at the state level for actually sponsoring legislation with those lessons learned.
And I'll have Kathy get with you, because all the things that you're wanting to keep as open action items, we want to memorialize in our minutes.
Yes, thank you. Any other comments about that or any of the details? Okay. Let's say the third leg of that stool is actually doing some analysis of what might be useful. As a result of the flooding problems last year, there's been an analysis called, I think it's called Matrix, or the company's called Matrix, to look at, some quantified analysis of the flood control problems over on the west side. In the same way, some good analysis of this, maybe at the state level, could be done with some of the local, especially defense contractors that are very familiar with these kinds of things. But doing some things before we actually go out and purchase equipment, or purchase, make those kinds of commitments would be pretty good. And we'd like to add that to the mix, maybe something we should consider.
The governor does recommend that already.
Okay. And if there is a committee, if they have some sort of process of that, we'd like to know about it.
That all folks are in that.
Okay, great. Mr. Paul Cook is the State Fire Division, Fire Prevention and Control Chief under Department of Public Safety. Okay. Well, that sort of covers some of the other things. And I'd like to just open it up to everybody else. Those are sort of the things we've already discussed in the side conversations. Any any other new initiatives or anything that people would like to add? Commissioner Grant, any other things, charges for the committee that you'd like to take a look at? From the senators or congressmen? Okay, very good. Before I think we've covered most of the sort of the general framework for the subcommittee. We will be looking for more information coming out of the lessons learned. And Commissioner Glenn, do you have a date for that? I think it's on the calendar, but
August 22nd, 5:30 to 7:30 at the tent at New Life.
okay, it's August 22nd at the tent at New Life. And, I'm sorry, you said 5:30 to
5:30 to 7:30.
5:30 to 7:30. And that is the county lessons learned quarterly meeting.
No, this is, well,
Well, sorry.
exactly. And
Initial.
we're really going to try to advertise this. We really want to provide this as an opportunity to get some good quality feedback from the community. It doesn't matter whether it's just from the initial fire response to the recovery effort. And I'm inviting all of the committee members to come and listen. We're there to listen with their concerns, document those concerns, and then we're going to take actions and pass those out to the subcommittees to go ahead and research and provide some additional feedback to them at the next meeting. But the specific goal for the committee members are to listen to get some good quality feedback on how we're doing on the recovery effort today.
Okay, thank you very much. Before we go into public testimony, I would like to make some other announcements. The governor is having a town hall meeting over in Manitou. I understand it's 7:30 tomorrow evening, and I don't know where. Has anybody heard any latest?
Art business.
Right across the street from the town hall, it's called the Arts of Business. Business of Arts, there you go, thank you.
And that's at 7:30?
7:30 is when we'll meet there.
7:30 tomorrow at Business Arts Center. And again, since we're doing all the announcements, tomorrow, 9 o'clock, is the Colorado Legislative Wildfire Committee at the state capitol. The next long-range county, El Paso County long-range planning committee should be August 28th at 5:30 here at Pinery. And I think that the next thing would be maybe to decide when, at least theoretically, we would like to meet again for this committee. And I would think it would be after the lessons learned committee, and probably after the next long-range planning committee, actually. Does that make sense, Commissioner Glenn? Okay, so we'll leave it open right now. Of course, we'll make public announcements at least 2 days prior, but the Black Forest Fire Legislative Support Committee will be looking sometime after August 28th, where we have the long-range planning committee, right? Okay. And
At the Wildland Task Force meeting is the 16th, the next one's the 16th of August, and that's at 9 o'clock at Colorado Municipal League.
That's Friday.
Right.
At Colorado Municipal League.
do you have an address?
1144 Sherman Street, Denver.
Okay, thank you. Before we go to public questions or comments, does anybody on the panel have any comments to make or other ideas before we go to Richard Glenn?
That's it for me.
Okay, thank you. While we open up the meeting then to public question, and sir, I think you're first dibs. And we'll need to get the microphone for you here. I think is that the second one?
Testing. Okay, very good. My name's Richard Painter, and this is my wife, Elizabeth Nordman. First, I'm going to apologize. I didn't know the style of this committee and its operation, or I would have brought my comments well written out and maybe more cogent than I will be able to do in the ad hoc fashion I've been writing for here. We lost absolutely everything in Black Forest Fire. Vehicles, home, possessions, valuables, everything. And so from that context, I have a series of comments from the county, state, and federal matters that are affecting us. First of all, we're just trying to survive. And people make comments about, well, let's attend all these meetings and give your input. You don't know how hard this is for us to even be here tonight. But it was important, so here we are. We continue to wait for resources. We have not sifted the debris that's left over from this fire yet. We're still waiting to get some of the steel and other materials out. And so, running around and trying to get an application to the SBA in 20 days or whatever it is unreasonable. The same goes for unemployment and other matters. They have the same kinds of limits. I operated out of my home, like many individuals in Black Forest, a high-tech consulting business. I'm a registered professional engineer in Colorado, and I did consulting out of my home. And I had electronics and computers and all this material. However, since about 2009, the economy has been so bad, business has been very low. Given that perspective, I now have absolutely no way to make a living. Everything is incinerated. Yet, if I go and address, let's get a business loan, I have no prospects for being able to pay a loan. Why would I be able to even apply for a loan when I have no ability to do so, to pay for one? I've never, ever taken out loans when I could not have a well-identified plan to pay them off in a very short time. My wife worked for Lockheed Martin for nearly 29 years. She had a stroke at work, and she cannot work now. So we are now without work. And so options that are presented, such as the SBA, become basically an untenable resource. It isn't a resource to us. It sounds good on the paper, it sounds good on the news and the reports, but when it hits the ground, it's not very functional. Someone said you should go and apply for unemployment because you lost the business, you're now basically unemployed. Here's a little statistic. I'm a single employee of my engineering company. I started it before we moved here. So for the past 18 years that my company has been operating, I have paid $739 into the federal unemployment. Now typically that's a $56 limit per year based on offsets from paying into other states, Colorado included. So that's a good chunk of money that I paid into the federal system. Since moving here in 1999 and working and paying my wage and reporting to Colorado unemployment, I have given Colorado $899 into their unemployment system. And for a good number of years that was the maximum. But in the last few years, excuse me, has dwindled off because the work has dwindled off. So when I call Colorado unemployment at the recommendation of all the people around us, they said, Mr. Pinery, you're not eligible. I said, but I paid $899 on behalf of Richard A. Painter into the Colorado system. Now the business has ceased to function, even exist. Why can't I? And they said, because you didn't have any wages the last 12 months. I go, how can that be? I paid you $899. Who was that for? If it wasn't on behalf of this employee. And the response is, nothing. We need something fixed there. So they said, we'll send you the disaster unemployment form. But when you read that, and I've got it and I'm ready to send it in, but I have no faith, it says the same thing. So that means all the federal unemployment money that my company has paid on my behalf into the system produces zero benefits for me again. I think there's problems there in the way that's administered.
So you'll find that out as soon as you apply, that you won't,
The Colorado people told me on the phone I did not qualify, because they would look some stuff
For
up.
the disaster? For the second one?
Don't know.
Okay.
That has the same
And-
parameters on it.
So will you take my card and let me know
No,
when it doesn't?
yes, I will. But I will go through the steps, and I will document in addition to that all these other factors. But I don't have much faith because I've seen how Colorado has responded. Okay? The county roads where I live have, over the years, produced runoff that damages my property. And several years ago, discussion with the county engineer, they said, yes, we need to fix that. They started doing some surveying, and then they didn't do any work, I'm sure because of budgets. But now that we have the forest disturbed, the water runoff is now a worse problem. And so I need the county to come back and deal with the problem that's been around for a long time, that's well documented, and so on. So there's a county issue. We need a policy to be set, whether it's county or state. It needs to be set as a policy, because here's what happened. We were not at our home at the time of the fire. However, we know these things happen. We have 2 caretakers with keys. Guess what? They were denied access. Yet, people were allowed to go in and get their cats. So we lost not only our home, which is an easy thing to rebuild, but we lost every valuable, every keepsake, money, and everything that we had in the safe, you know, all that stuff that you normally go in and grab during the evacuation time. And there was plenty of time. Because another associate of mine said he stood at my property worried about whether my wife was still there or not knowing where we were, at 6 p.m. on the 11th. And my people were denied access at 4:30. So there was clearly plenty of time. We need policy to support me going to the sheriff's office and say, you can't have this ad hoc way of letting people go in and get their cat or their horse, but you can't get, you know, a vast amount of your valuables. Okay? So we need some kind of policy set by somebody above the local level so that this can be instrumented in a way that everybody can benefit from this. How do we get copies of the report Mr. Klein has referred to about you referred to a study that was being done and there would be a report release. We'd like to be able to get copies of that. So somehow they need to tell us that. Now, one other comment I have, and then I'll let everybody else talk. Maybe I'm going to be the only one, I don't know. But Senator, the systems that you referred to about credentialing, and I don't know how knowledgeable you are on it. I'm sure Mr. Klein is very knowledgeable on this. I'm well trained in the all hazards system. And the other system, the NWCG, which is sort of the wildfire system, the red card system. These are oil and water people. They do not mix. And I'm highly trained as a radio specialist. And just to point that out, I came down here, we came when we were notified the fire was underway. We were north of Denver. And I finally arrived at 9:30 that night. And I went right to the command post, and I worked for 17 hours straight while my house burned. providing networking, radio, integrating services with the Air Force, comm trucks, all this stuff. That's what we train for and what we do. Yet, the moment the federal team shows up, if you don't have your red card, you leave. That's exactly how that's done. And even though you can take the training materials and set them side by side from the all hazards and NWCG, they look almost identical, and of course it would make sense. But you have to go do it all over again. Now ironically, I was nearly completed with my requirements for the NWCG, but had not finished them yet. And so I'm pointing this out because I'm one of the expert resources, yet I can't be used now, sorry. And people from the outside who actually know little about our topology, our radio systems, and all that we have in place, they're the ones who take over. But the ones who have the local knowledge and expertise, they have to leave. That's the system. And more power to you if you can solve that. But a lot of people have complained for the last 10 years at least on the dichotomy of these two systems and the idiocy of it to some extent. We understand why the NWCG has their procedures and rules. It's to save lives mainly of wildland firefighters. But not all of us are wildland firefighters. I'm a communicator. I don't stay close to the red stuff. But you need those people. But they don't allow for a difference. They don't allow an all hazards highly trained radio person to be one without going through all their other training. So there's a lot to be done there, and I don't think that'll happen in the next few years. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Painter. And there were, I counted, maybe 4 or 5 issues there. Let me just make a quick comment about each one. On the actual filling out of the forms and so forth, if you interfaced with the State Department of Labor and Employment, which I think would be probably where you went. If you're having problems with that, I think either Representative Stevens or I would be glad to talk to our legislative staff to help out with that particular problem, and be glad to give their cards afterward. We'll talk about that as a constituent issue. On the county roads, I think we've got that on the docket, and I'm not sure where he should go to that. The county, well, talk to Commissioner Glenn about that one, and we'll get to the right place on that one. The county policy, you talked about I guess using a commission surrogate to go into the caretaker, to go into the property. I'm not sure if, I would think the sheriff might already have latitude to make that decision, but that's one of those lessons learned. I think that we need to defer the lessons learned him, because I think he has the authority, his deputies have the authority to follow. That isn't policy, it's a local policy of whoever's in charge of the firefight.
It should be brought, I shouldn't have to find that out either, someone else not being able to take advantage of it in Denver or, where else.
Yeah, and Mr. Painter's comment was that should be sort of universal throughout the state. But again, that's, in my definition, that would be one of those command and control issues. Who has the authority to make that decision on the ground? Is it the local firefighter from Engine 10, or is it the county sheriff? Is it, because there has to be somebody in charge to filter for public safety. But I think that's well pointed. I think that's a lesson learned issue. On the study we talked about before is the defensible space study, and when we get defensible, I think that's the right title, the defensible space study, and their work, what's the local group that they're working with?
Pikes Peak Wildfire Partnership.
Pikes Peak Wildfire Partnership, and I think Mr. Klein can hook you up with the local people that are working on that, and if we do get other information about that, that'll be posted on the county website, all the contracts that are studied. that may take a while to complete, several of them. On the all hazards thing, we already raised the issue about the red cards. I thought this was a problem 2 years ago, and it's continued to be a problem. We have knocked down some barriers for volunteers as far as those MOUs between counties, but we will have to work that. I think that's another lessons learned issue, but Mr. Klein and I worked on that when we get here before. But in my estimation, that's also a command and control problem, because the federal government should not be deciding what our local county authorizes for his fire response. And the federal government should not get in the way of that. So again, it's it's how you divvy up who's legally responsible. And it's one of those things we need to look at in depth, and I think that's already on our agenda. So I hope that's useful. The Small Business Administration. We have the most recent information there, and I might have missed your exact comment on that, but
Basically, it's untenable for us, because you have
Yeah.
to have resources to pay a loan. So if you don't take out a loan unless you can pay. So if you have no work, you can't pay. So you can't apply for it.
and I don't personally know enough about the SBA process, if that's all loans or if they have other mechanisms. I don't know. So
Find out about what they have to say. Obviously, they're
Timing is probably.
very, very good financial sense about not taking out a loan that you don't think you can repay is absolutely right. And so, the fact that your prospects for employment, if there hadn't been a fire. So, but I would suggest that you could go talk to them and find out what all of the ramifications are around it.
And the follow-up point is, you gotta do it by like tomorrow or something.
Well, that's what
We're just.
Yeah, understood. I just remember him saying that if you can at least get your conversation with them started, you're inside the time frame, even if you don't take out the loan for a year.
And we're trying to absorb this ourselves because the press release just came out today. But Mr. Klein has more information about the deadlines for this.
Yes, the deadline to apply is October 14th. The assistance center is open for a week, but you've got till October 14th to do the extra application.
Wasn't there a press release that said like August 29th something it had the deadline?
So the center's going to be open until the 29th. They'll be there at the center full-time until the 29th. But, Jeff,
Okay, so the wording said applications must be made by that time.
yeah, good.
And that's my point. That's
And
not the center.
that may be unclear. I'll give you my copy of this at the end of the meeting.
It says the filing deadline to return applications for property damage is October 14th. The deadline to return economic injury applications is May 14th, 2014. So that's more, you faced economic injury because of the last one.
Right. So we'll give you a hard copy of that
Yeah.
before you leave. Next question, sir. I think I'm pointing in the back.
Thank you, Greg.
And if you could just identify your name for the record.
Sure. Stephen Sorensen. I've been out in Black Forest since 1985 and a member of Colorado Springs Community since 1976. As a tree farmer, my wife and I have benefited a lot from the State Forest Service. We're most recently benefiting not only from them, but from Greg and others there. My comment relates to the fact that before the fire, we were in a position of literally saying, hey, if you like some small seedling trees, come get them. I don't want to fall in the holes that are left, but you may have the trees. Well, most all of our trees are gone. We were ground zero, a mile and a half off Holmes Road. So, as Greg has seen recently, the seedlings are even including the ones that we planted from seedlings that are now 18 feet tall, they're gone, okay? My comment relates to funding for, whether it's Forest Service, I would assume, but another entity that would be able to provide higher quantities of trees at low or no cost to people like us. That to us is practical help. We can talk about many other things, and they're very important, I'm sure. But there are many of us who are saying, look, we love trees. We've planted them, we've nurtured them, I've watched them grow, and I literally, a week before the fire, said to my wife, you know what, I think our forest is about set. I can go fishing. Oops, it's gone, okay? We've had the fire chief out, we've had foresters out. We had mitigated, we still have our home, but lost, other things. So, I guess my comment is what could be done to provide trees for me and others who love trees, who aren't in a position to buy trees X feet tall for $100, $200 at the nurseries. I even had buckets for people who could borrow to transport the trees. I'm now going in and went to talk to nurseries. Can I borrow your buckets because maybe I can find somebody up in Monument or other people to give us some trees. So, but I know there are many, many families out here that would welcome the opportunity. And I know at the same time, State Forest Service tends to operate that at cost. It's not my understanding. So I don't know what their capability would be to do something on a larger scale. But I mean, I personally would love to put in 1,800 trees in the spring. And, so that's all I have to say. If there's more that can be done to provide people like us with low cost, no cost trees, that is a practical benefit many of us would appreciate. Thank you.
And I can actually address that. And sir, if you could give your contact information, Kathy Russell back there, we will put you in contact with our cleanup and debris removal committee because they are actually looking into that particular issue. And we can have you added to that committee as far as the mailing list. And I know that they're actively trying to come up with some solutions for that.
There are two other agencies that you might want to contact. The Extension, CSU Extension, Colorado State University Extension, and Mr. Klein will have some information about that. Does NRCS have some of that as well?
For trees, not necessarily, just for reforestation of that sort. I was at a public meeting about a month ago, and there was a woman that stood up and she was saying, our property didn't get burned. We have lots of seedling trees out there. We're willing to give them away. So some of the people in the Black Forest area that didn't get burned might offer up their trees for you to help get that started again.
And that was Mr. Langer from National Resource Conservation Service. And even if he doesn't have jurisdiction, he's a very helpful person to know. And Mr. Klein, do you have a point of contact that you recommend for the extension?
I can get that for you. The other question I had though, did I understand that you were running a tree farm?
Tree farm is a designation that reads like an accounting. It means we manage the forest according to generally accepted forestry practices. We don't actively sell the trees, but we were regularly certified by the state foresters, showing that we were taking proper steps to care for the forest.
Yeah, I was just wondering if it would be something for the, for commercial.
Sometimes it can be for commercial purposes, but the designation for us with the size acreage we had, which was 21 acres, was primarily a demonstration of our commitment to take care of, be stewards of the forest.
Thank you.
Any other public questions or comments? Anything more from the panel? I think we're approaching the end, and at least I am, maybe a couple of panel members here are be glad to stay a few minutes and just get to know you, whatever, answer any personal questions you have. And Mr. Painter and Mr. Sorensen, I'd like to, extend our sympathies for your loss as well as this whole community. I think this is, the whole county has gone through a lot, with the whole Walden Canyon experience and now this and Mountain Shadows. And, we definitely want to try to help in any way we can. So, thank you all for coming. And I would like, I guess, last thing to thank Pinery and especially Lori. I think she stepped out of the room, but they helped set this up tonight. Have been very, very helpful in getting us together here. We appreciate them having us at this facility. So, one last chance. Any other questions? Public questions? Okay, well, we'll stand adjourned until we find out after the next long-range planning committee when we're going to meet, and we'll announce that, make public announcements about that. Okay, thank you for coming.